Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden inside the belly of one of the Cold War's most mysterious bombers, the Ilyushin Il-28, known to NATO as the Beagle? Was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of Soviet power, a shadow that haunted the skies, and a weapon designed to carry destruction into the very heart of enemy territory. When you first look at it, the Il-28 may not seem as intimidating as the sleek supersonic jets that came later, but beneath its rugged exterior was a story of fear, ambition, and global influence, a story that shaped the destiny of nations and altered the balance of power in the skies. From its first flight in 1948 to its service across continents, the Il-28 was not only the Soviet Union's first successful jet bomber, it was also the blueprint for decades of aerial warfare. Imagine the world in the late 1940s. The Second World War had just ended, but a new conflict was brewing, a silent war fought not on battlefields but in shadows, in strategy rooms, and in the skies. The Cold War was rising, and the Soviet Union needed a weapon to counter the growing strength of the United States. In this race for dominance, the Il-28 emerged as a key player. It was fast, it was versatile, and above all, it was reliable. At a time when nuclear weapons were redefining the very meaning of war, the Soviets needed a bomber that could carry these weapons deep into enemy territory. The Il-28 was their answer. Designed by the brilliant Sergei Ilyushin, this twin-engine bomber was revolutionary for its time. Powered by two Klimov VK-1 turbojet engines, it could reach speeds of over 900 kilometers per hour with a range that allowed it to strike targets far beyond Soviet borders. But speed and range were just the beginning. The Il-28 carried a bomb load of up to 3,000 kilograms, and that included the possibility of carrying nuclear payloads. That meant this bomber could change the course of war in just a single mission. The cockpit was cramped, the instruments were simple, and the visibility was limited. Yet Soviet pilots admired the Il-28 for its reliability. Unlike many experimental aircraft of its era, the Beagle was robust. It could take off from rough airstrips, operate in harsh weather, and endure the stress of long missions. Soviet propaganda portrayed it as a marvel of engineering, and in many ways it truly was. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the Il-28 story was how far its wings reached beyond the Soviet Union. This bomber spread across the globe. It served in the air forces of more than 20 countries, including China, Egypt, North Korea, and Vietnam. Wherever there was tension, wherever there was conflict, the Beagle was not far away. In the Korean War, in the Middle East, in Africa, and even in South Asia, the Il-28 was a tool of influence, a message of power sent by Moscow to its allies and enemies alike. One striking feature of the Il-28 was its defensive armament. Unlike earlier bombers, which often relied on escorts, the Beagle had its own teeth. It came equipped with powerful cannons mounted in the nose and tail, giving it the ability to fight back against enemy fighters. The tail gunner sat in a pressurized compartment armed with twin 23mm cannons, watching the skies behind, ready to unleash fire on anyone who dared attack. It was this combination of offensive and defensive power that made the Beagle such a respected and feared machine. Yet despite its strengths, the Il-28 was also a paradox. On one hand, it was advanced for the late 1940s. On the other, it was quickly becoming outdated. In the jet age, by the 1960s, supersonic interceptors and surface-to-air missiles threatened to make bombers like the Il-28 obsolete. But the Soviet Union was practical. Instead of discarding the Beagle, they adapted it. They turned it into a trainer, into a reconnaissance aircraft, and even into a torpedo bomber for naval operations. This adaptability extended its life far beyond what anyone could have imagined, and here lies the real secret of the Il-28. It was not the fastest, not the sleekest, not even the most heavily armed bomber, but it was everywhere. It was produced in huge numbers. Over 6,000 units were built, and its sheer availability meant it became the workhorse of the Cold War skies. For many smaller nations, it was the most advanced jet aircraft they had ever flown, and with each takeoff it carried not only bombs but also the political weight of Soviet influence. Now let us look inside the bomber. Imagine yourself sitting in the cockpit. The cramped space is filled with dial switches and the constant roar of the engines. You are flying low over hostile territory. Radar locked onto your plane, anti-aircraft fire lighting up the night sky. Your mission is clear: deliver your payload and return alive. The tension is unbearable, but this was the reality for Il-28 crews. For them, every flight was a gamble, every mission a dance with death, and yet they flew with determination because they knew they carried the future of their nation on their wings. History records several times when the Il-28 nearly changed the world. During the Suez Crisis in 1956, Egyptian Il-28 bombers stood ready to strike against Western forces. During the Korean War, the threat of North Korean Il-28s forced the United States and its allies to remain constantly alert. In Vietnam, the aircraft was used for reconnaissance and strikes, proving once again its versatility. But beyond the battlefields, the Il-28 had another impact. It became a symbol of Soviet military might. In the eyes of the world. Whenever these bombers appeared in parades flying over Red Square, they were not just machines, they were messages to the world that the Soviet Union was ready, powerful, and unafraid, and perhaps that is why even today, decades after its retirement, the Il-28 still captures the imagination of historians and aviation enthusiasts. It was not just an aircraft, it was a chapter of history, a reminder of a time when the world balanced on the edge of nuclear war and machines like the Beagle were the heart of that balance. Now, as you watch the story unfold, ask yourself what secrets still lie hidden in the legacy of the Il-28, what missions were carried out in silence, what moments changed history without us ever knowing, and most importantly, what would it feel like to be inside one of these bombers when the engines roared to life, when the bomb bay doors opened, when the fate of nations rested on your shoulders if you found yourself inside the Il-28 during those tense moments of the Cold War. What would you feel? The fear, the pride, the weight of history? These are the questions that keep the legend of the Beagle alive, and this is why we continue to explore it, because the Il-28 is not just a relic, it is a reminder of how fragile and dangerous our world once was, and perhaps still is. So, if you enjoyed diving into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support keeps this journey alive and helps us uncover even more incredible stories of aviation and warfare. And don't forget, the adventure continues in our next video. The link is waiting for you right now in the description. Go ahead, click it, and step into the next chapter of military history.